Test, 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 test. Starting recording. Alright, I'm here. Red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather. Alright, I'm here. I just got my first haircut. This is part 3 dedicated to Blind Centipede. No Longer Human. This book got huge on Book Talk. Really popular, came out of nowhere. I had some trouble finding it when I first read it. I would like to read it again. I don't think Desire is as good as Mishima. Is it an S? No Longer Human might be, but it's been about 7 or 8 years. I'll put it at the A, see how I feel about it. The Setting Sun, I read it pretty quickly after No Longer Human. I am not a huge fan of it. It was fine. That's a B. Picture of Dorian Gray, really good. I wasn't so hot on Wild earlier, but Picture of Dorian Gray is pretty good. It's possibly an A. Byron's complete works. The running theme of my poetry memory holes. I will put that in the memory hole. Studied him a bit, read a bit of him, bit of a blind spot. Hermann Hesse's Reflections. I don't know if I ever read this, and if I did, I only read a tiny little bit of it. Maybe I'll read it one day. I think it's his just reflections on his life and on his craft. It's probably worthwhile. Kafka the Trial. Ooh, I'm going to put it at an A. Could be an S. I'm seeming to be more conservative with the S's already. Probably an S, let's be honest. But like a dog. It's an S. Aspects of the novel. This is a really useful book. If you're a writer, it just sort of breaks down aspects of plot, character, theme, symbolism, all that fabula. Forster was an academic. This book served me well when I was learning to write, and I would recommend it. Probably a C. Nausea. Not a great memory of Nausea. It's probably an A. It's probably my favourite work of Sartre, although maybe that's not true. I'm looking at this A, and it could be higher and it could be lower, and I'm tempted to move it into the DNF revisit, but I'll leave it at A. Why not? Cat's Cradle. Now this is a Vonnegut I sort of do remember, and it's not as good as a different one that I can see already just below it, so I'm just going to put it at a B. Pretty good. The Netanyahus. This is possibly... it's not an S. I was almost very kind and gave it an S. I think it's hilarious. It's one of the funny books I've read in a long time. It's a fictionalization of Harold Bloom's encounter with the Netanyahu family. It's sort of outrageous. I think it was 2022. I think it got the Booker Prize. Really good. Really a phenomenal piece of writing. Probably the best book of that year. Maybe. Slaughterhouse 5. Now, this is Vonnegut's best, in my opinion. I think it's really good, and I will put it at an A. Fear and Trembling. This is Kierkegaard's writing on Abraham and Isaac, and I really like it. It's very short. I'll put it at an A. It's not super readable, even for Kierkegaard. Tibetan Book of Living and Dying. I actually prefer this to the Book of the Dead. I think this is more digestible and straight shooting for a general reader, and it's pretty good. It's just, again, about looking at life and death through a Buddhist lens. Oblomov. I'm going to just put it in the S. I really like the first 100 pages of this novel. I remember the novel being hilarious. Russian classic. I think like the first 50 pages or so it's set entirely in bed, which is hilarious. Very funny novel. Less recognized than a lot of the other Russians, Koncharov. And it's possibly an A, but I'm going to put it at the S just because I have really fond memories of reading it, and I remember really loving it when I read it. Beyond Good and Evil. It's an A. That feels right next to Fear and Trembling. The Road. This is lesser McCarthy. I don't super care for The Road. It's fine. I mean, it's McCarthy, so it's obviously extremely competent, but it's fine. I'll give it a C. Lolita, I just reread Lolita, and I'm going to put it at an S. I think Pale Fire at an S, and it's definitely as good as Pale Fire, probably better than Pale Fire. It's beautiful, beautiful prose. A lot darker than I remember. People are always saying, oh, you don't really see anything, and it's all very sleight of hand in its content, but it's pretty explicit and pretty graphic, despite not being openly, it's not like pornographic. And of course, that's the point that people sort of get towards. Fantastically readable. Always feel weird about reading that one in public. Shocker, I wonder why. The other name, Septology 1 and 2. So these are the first 2 of the 5 books of Septology, Jon Fosse's epic. He obviously won the Nobel Prize last year. With good cause, it's really good. It does a lot of stuff that does this sort of layering of text where usually you have a line break between characters speaking if it's a different character, but sometimes there'll be a line break when it's the same character, and it's really readable. I don't know how he really achieved that. It's difficult to maybe explain. Maybe I could show it on the screen, but I really enjoyed it, and it builds really magnificently. I'm not familiar with books 3 and 5. I'll read them maybe eventually. I probably should have read them. And I will give it an 8. 1,000 Nights and One Night. Alright, this is a bedside book. I've read very little of this. It's like 1,000 pages long. We all know it. Shahrazad and the endless storytelling. Storytelling is the means to save one's life. The Great Arabian Epic, and I'd put it at an S or an A, but I'm going to put it at a DNF revisit, because I technically haven't read it. The Count of Monte Cristo, I'm going to put it at an A. It could be an S. It's very good. It's thrilling and exciting, and sometimes a bit of a slog. And in my mind, it's like not as good as Don Quixote or some of the other really long epics. It's not as good as Crime and Punishment, or, yeah. Whatever. A feels right. Rave. I didn't like Rave. There's a few other books. I've written a book similar to Rave. Psychedelic dancing, weird prose. And Rave was just too long and too much of a slog. DNF, nah. The Castle of Otranto, that's a memory hole. Death on the Installment Plan, that's an S. This is Celine's other novel. First novel? Second novel? I think it came after. It's hilarious, filthy, gripping, grave, fantastic. It's one of my favourite works. I can't wait to read it again. Again, one of those books where the context in which you encounter it imbues it with a special sort of energy, and when I was reading this book was a very particular moment in my life. I mentioned Celine in episode 1. I think it was the first book that came up. He's an amazing writer. He was a doctor as well, very intelligent man, before his great descent. And I wish he had written more. Patterson. This is one of my favourite poems. Very long. The film's really good too. This isn't very much like the film. Jim Jarmusch, I think. And yeah, it's really good. Check out Patterson. I guess I should say, could it be an S? Why not? I'm feeling good. I'll put it in the S. In its content, it's like a sort of a Ulysses of this city, Patterson, New Jersey, and all of the history there and the development of the city and the bus lines and the public life intersecting with nature, and really good. It's probably William Carlos Williams' best. Tyranny of Merit. This is a non-fiction book about meritocracy and the reality of meritocracy. It's really good. It's really worthwhile. I'll put it at an A. Meritocracy is a dangerous game, and I really do recommend The Tyranny of Merit if you're interested in what the hell is going on in liberalism. What am I trying to say? If you're unhappy with the neoliberal world, I think The Tyranny of Merit will have something to say to you that's worthwhile. Edward Levy's Suicide. This is probably an S. Levy didn't leave us with much. 4 sort of pamphlet novels. They're not even novels, they're autobiographical and semi-biographical. I would describe them as chilling, unique, admirable, depressing, decidedly French. I love Levy. I mentioned A Mercy last video. It's pretty good. It's probably an A. I really like A Mercy. I can't remember a lot about it, actually, now that I'm sitting here and trying to pull it out of my brain hole, but I know it's really good. Rules of Attraction. This is a classic college novel about yuppies and bisexuals and America. It's pretty fine. I enjoyed it. It's a V. Middlemarch. This is Eliot's masterpiece, although I never got through Middle of the Floss. I never started it. I really like Middlemarch. You know, when I think of George Eliot, all the others, the Austen, the Brontes, they don't come close. They really don't come close. So I'm going to put Middlemarch at an S. Frankenstein. It's alright. It's a B. Frankenstein, you know what it is. It's nothing like what pop culture says it is. There's some weird elements with the Frankenstein's monster, and it's really impressive for something that was written at 19 years of age. It's pretty good. B. It's fine. Confusions of Young Taurus. This is pretty dark, and is it an S? I'm gonna do it. I mean, Middlemarch is there. It's pretty gross. In my mind, I would categorize it alongside Notes from Underground, alongside A Posthumous Confession. A lot of these dark, confessional, really roaringly emotive adolescent novels. And it's full of emotion and energy, and it's disturbing. Pretty good. Correction. Oh, am I being overzealous with the S's? Correction is really, it's a postmodern masterpiece. It's a quasi-fictionalization of Wittgenstein, and it's a single block of unbroken text sort of building towards these cones and shapes, and this building of a sort of indescribable structure. So Rottheimer, it comes to mind. It speaks towards so much. Industrialization, the soul, logic. Oof. It's almost indescribable. Very perplexing novel, really gripping, and not for everyone. If you're not into the postmodern shtick, I'd stick away from Correction. Absalom. This is a cringing, embarrassing DNF revisit. I didn't finish Absalom, and I had maybe, how many false starts have I had? 4, 5? What I have read is very excellent, and it's probably one of Faulkner's greatest, and I know people who think it's better than Sound of the Fury. I haven't been able to finish it. It's just not happened for me yet. Stop it. Tribby's Anatomy of Story. This is a filmmaking book, really useful if you're writing scripts or you want to do film essays, anything like that. You probably see it. It's probably a book you see cited in a lot of film essays, YouTube essays on film. It's great. It's as good as Adventures in the Screen Trade, and it's a really useful tool for investigating story. It's even useful for just novelists, even if you're just interested in how to build a narrative. It'll do it, and I'll give it a B. We. I have not a lot of memory of We. It's better than Brave New World, and it's at least as good as 1984, I think. It's in that vein of dystopian, totalitarian novels in a sort of post-human world where humans have been crushed into the atomized functions of a capitalist hellscape. And it's pretty good. Yeah, I'll put it at an A. It's as good as No Mercy. Ecce Homo, another one of Nietzsche's short works, and one of his more readable. I'm going to put it at an S, because some Nietzsche is an S, of course it is. And Ecce Homo, I got more from that than I did from Beyond Good and Evil, so check it out. Either or. This is more readable than people make it out to be. It's Kierkegaard's philosophical investigations. It's a case for and against moral life, for and against faith, the aesthetics of life. It's a book that changes based on how old you are and how you relate to it, similar to like Goethe, Sorrows of Young Werther. At one age you'll identify with one character and one view, and at an older age you'll probably flip and jump around. I always argue that it's a novel. People tend to categorize in academia Kierkegaard into philosophical non-fiction, but in my opinion it's an epistolary novel, and it's a really good one. It's an S. Pond, somewhat contemporary, I think maybe in the last 10 years. Pond is a cute pastoral. I think this was a Paper Bird recommendation, and it was cute, it was fine. It's probably an A. I liked it. Double Wolf. This is a novelization of Freud, and I wasn't super into it. I want to read more Brian Castro, and it was okay. Maybe it's a DNF, but I'm going to put it at a C. Gilead. This is the lesser of the two Marilyn Robinson works that I've read, and it's a pretty competent novel, and it's a B. Brief Interviews with Hideous Men. Oh, I think it's an A. There's some short stories in here that are probably S or close to it, and looking at the body of David Foster Wallace's fiction as a whole, I'd put this on the more mature end of the scale. And it's really readable. Not as many games going on. There's a bit of cleverness, but there's also a lot of heart and a lot of humanity in these stories. Hard Times. I didn't finish Hard Times. Or if I did finish it, I didn't really enjoy it or pay attention. I'm going to put it at a DNF revisit. Hesse, Strange News from Another Planet. That's pure memory hole. Straight away. Helen Garner, Honouring Other People's Children. Memory hole. Schoolgirl, it's a C. That's a really pithy work of Desires, and I read it after reading the other two, and it didn't do anything for me. Lord of the Flies, really good. I'd like to revisit it. It's probably an A. I'm going to put it in the DNF revisit because it's just been so long since I read it. Man's Fate. This is a fantastic novel about the failed revolution in Shanghai. It's gripping. It's incredible, horrifying. I have to reread it soon. Really incredible. Le Condition Humane. I really enjoyed it. And it's one of the ones that I don't ever talk to people about. No one's really read this one. Professors and other people that I know who are pretty well read, they're always shrugging their shoulders. when I bring up La Condition Humane, and it's fantastic. Super underrated, to my knowledge. Volcano, I bought this on a whim in a random little bookshop in the UK, and it was a surprisingly nice read. It's principally about two characters. One's a faith-having Christian, and the other's a scientist, and they have a conflicting opinion about whether a volcano will erupt in Japan. It's really good, really fine novel, and maybe not an A, let's put it at a B. Running Dog, memory hole. Lectures in America, really good non-fiction by Stein, some great stuff in there. Stein is someone I came to far too late, and I should revisit some of these lectures. I'm going to put it at an A. Sabbath Theatre. All right. Can you believe that I bought this book for its cover? Because I thought the cover was that cool. Sabbath Theatre was a life-changing novel for me. I'll just straight up put it in the S. It's filthy and fantastic, and there's nothing quite like it to my memory. And it was like a watershed moment for me, reading Sabbath Theatre. I suddenly realized that the confines of literature were not what I had thought them to be. And some writers could be filthy, gripping, intellectual, and yet depraved, and it's almost inexplicable. It's almost difficult to define. Sabbath Theatre for me was a life-changing work. And I mean, I haven't read it in like 8 years. I've really got to come back to it sometime. So I think it's an S. I'm pretty confident. All right, Steppenwolf. I've been putting Hesse in sort of random places. I would probably maybe put this in the S. I'm going to put it in the A because I don't think it's an S, but it's really good. It could definitely be an S. The Wisdom of Insecurity. This is Alan Watts on Buddhism. He brought it over to America in a really effective way. This book did a lot for me when I was a pretty anxious and uninformed individual, and it's a B. Probably higher, but fine. The Children of Men. The movie is better. It's a C. It's a fine novel. Really delicious themes and some really great conceits in The Children of Men. I just prefer the film. 1984. That's an A. It's pretty good. Some of it's a bit of a slog, and it's sort of a meme at this point, but I mean, I've got a memory hole in this list for a reason, and Orwell is a fully competent writer. 20,000 Leagues, DNF revisit. The Master and the Margarita. Again, I was a pretty immature reader when I came to this, and it could be anywhere from an S to a C, and because of that, I'm going to have to put it at a DNF revisit. Some scenes really stand out to me as effective and evocative all these years later, but I just really don't remember much about the book. And I was far too immature of a reader to really understand what I was doing and what I was getting into. The Master of Petersburg. This could be an S. I'm not confident enough to put it up there. I do think it's Ketsy's best fiction that I've read. It's very good. It's a fictionalization of Dostoevsky, and it does some wonderful stuff with the death of a child and the appropriation of another's life, the lives of others. Critique of Pure Reason. I mean, this is one of the most important books for the Enlightenment, for thinking about it. Kant is all over philosophy departments, all over the humanities. His hands are in every pie for a reason. I haven't read all of the critique, obviously, and some of it's good. I could probably put this at an S to an A to a B, and the reality is that it's one of those intangibles, and I'm going to put it at a DNF revisit because it's something that I'll come to in various ways. The Idiot. This isn't Dostoevsky's best. Parable of Jesus in a Russian context. I seem to remember being kind of funny, and some tragic and interesting scenes. I'm going to put it at an A. I mean, it's Dostoevsky, and looking at my A's, it's at least as good as all of those. So, Chess. This is a fantastic short story of Zweig's, and it's an A, and it could possibly even be higher. It's a really sophisticated, fantastic short story about a chess master. Check it out. Siddhartha. I think Siddhartha... Oh, what happened? Siddhartha. I'm going to put it at an S. This book really influenced me. I've gifted it many, many times. It's a retelling of Siddhartha, the Buddha, from a German writer. Again, similar to Watts, a really effective tool in the proliferation of Buddhism in the European sphere, in the Anglosphere. And it's excellent. I've tried to proliferate this book onto others in lots of different contexts, and I do so for a reason. It's a good book for non-readers. It's very readable. The Ice Saints. I read this one overseas, and I have zero recollection of it. I'm going to put it in the memory hole. I'll put it in the C. I seem to remember it being fine. Telluria. I didn't super care for this. This author, what's his name? Sorokin? I think that's how you say it. A lot of hype behind him. some great contemporary translations being made, to my knowledge. I didn't super care for this novel, even in the context of the current situation in the Ukraine. And I will put it at a C. Nazi literature in the Americas. It's a lesser of Bolaño's work. I'm interested in a lot of the things that it's doing. I don't super care for it. It could possibly be a C, but I'm going to put it at a B. Agape Agape, I'm going to put that at an A. It's a haunting novel, a death rattle, written on the deathbed of a great author. It's a confrontation with death. It's an attempt to grapple with unfinished business and trying to deal with the deluge of all the things one gets in life today, all the possessions, all the ideas, all the objects, and yeah, it's a sort of living nightmare, this novel, and it's a death rattle of one of my favourite authors, so it haunts me. Why Read, Will Self. This has some interesting essays in it. He can be a bit verbose at times, but he is an intellectual. He seems to be a very well-read man. I've not read any of his fiction, which is a blind spot for me, and I will put Why Read at a B. Plato's Laws, difficult to assess. It's sort of integral Plato, and I will put it at an A. Dracula. I don't super care for Dracula. The epistolary form can be fun, but it doesn't interest me heaps. Dracula there's some spookiness in it, but it isn't as spooky as any adaptation, really, you'll ever see. And it's a fine entry book. Lots of people like Dracula. It's alright. It's a C. I, Claudius. This is a fictionalization of Claudius, and it's a memory hole. I mean, Robert Graves is a pretty informed scholar of antiquity, but I don't remember it being as good as Williams's Augustus, so, not into it. Not for me. It's fine. A Christmas Carol and Other Writings, it's a C. That's just Dickens having a sort of heart, having a small, brief heart. Neuromancer. This is a way harder novel than I thought it would be. It's hard science fiction. It's something I'd probably have to reread to give a truer evaluation of. I'm going to give it a B. It's pretty tough, and it's super influential for a reason. And, I mean, it's the cyberpunk text. It's the thing. It's the pre-internet. I'll go back to Neuromancer one day, I think. I don't know if it could ever get higher than a B or an A, though. Stop it. Under the Skin, I read this in the last 6 months, and it's got some interesting stuff. The prose is a bit, to put it nicely, a bit and the film is infinitely better. Night for Day, this is a period piece about early Hollywood by Patrick Flannery. It seems to be, in my memory, pretty fine. I'm going to put it at a B. A Frolic of His Own. This is one of Gaddis's great. It's his third novel. It's about a lawyer and a series of incidents surrounding the creation of an American play and various estates. And it's as gripping as all of Gaddis's other amazing satirical works. It's full of black comedy and philosophy, truism, obscure and esoteric theology and philosophy, and it's among the greatest of all American epics. I will say for clarity, it's only my third favourite book of Gaddis's, so as highly as I esteem it, it's not the first thing I would recommend. My computer has just crashed, so whatever books I didn't get to evaluate, I will evaluate in the next one. My computer is just dead, so my tier list will not be saved. Thank you for tuning in. That's it, I guess. I'm going to put my face on the full screen. Hey, it's me. I got through maybe 60 books. I'm losing my voice again. I can't keep doing this at this time of day. Thank you for watching. I'm maybe halfway through my bookshelf. A little under halfway through my bookshelf. I've got multiple bookshelves, so I'm just looking around at them now. There's still some big hits that I haven't mentioned yet, so I'm looking forward to talking about some of my favourite novels. I was just touching on Gaddis. Maybe I'll get to Gaddis soon. Maybe some others. Joseph McElroy. Alright, that's it from me. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. What am I doing? Talking about books all night. What am I doing? Spending my night talking about, gotta go to sleep, keep talking about books.